Welcome back, everybody, to my show, Out of the Darkness into the Light. It's episode 3 this week, and I'm super excited to be here with the very huge influencer of Salt Lake City, Damian Trujillo. So, how's it going? What's up?
It's going really good. I'm honored to be here. It's pretty cool to be sitting down with you today.
Awesome. So, I'm going to just kind of dig right in. I just want to start by saying that my favorite observations of you are that you're just like such a down-to-earth, relatable person. You have so much influence and such a huge presence in Salt Lake, both literally and figuratively. You know, when you walk into a room, people know who the fuck you are. You know, they know you, and you just kind of have people, you just have that energy about you that people flock to you. You're very interesting. At the same time, you're extremely sweet and humble and just very low-key and down to earth. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So why don't you start us off by telling us a little bit about your story?
All right. So first, I'm honored to be here. I'm from Salt Lake. I've lived out here all my life. I grew up in South Jordan. And I lived there till I was about 15 years old, and then moved even further south to Bluffdale when I was about 15 or 16. And I started getting in trouble pretty young. I got involved with gangs, drugs, alcohol, all of it, and started getting incarcerated and going to jail, or not jails, but detention centers, youth correction facilities, home confinements, places like that, and then started dabbling in drugs and alcohol, and by the time I was 16 years old, I was already a full-blown drug addict. Started doing meth, and I was staying up for weeks at a time, carrying around guns, and just kind of in the deep of it. It seemed like around that time I was in the deep of it. Like, I was hanging out with the people that were doing a lot of the bad stuff out in this valley. I was hanging out with the killers and drug dealers and people getting arrested for bank robberies and murders, and I was just right in the middle of it, and it's kind of life that kind of excited me. I didn't like the fact that I was getting locked up and getting arrested. That was kind of embarrassing, and but I feel like I kind of realized from a pretty young age that I was going to either end up dead or in prison by the time I was 21 years old. I really didn't see my life going further than that, and turned out that I was 21. When I was 21 years old, I was in prison, but I was still alive, and I got released when I was 21 years old. I went in when I was 19, and after I turned 21, I was like, well, this is kind of a fluke. Maybe I'll live to be 23, and I just kept doing that. I give myself a couple more years and a couple more years, and a lot of it was because I was living on this fine line and this edge, and I didn't really value life at all. I think, like my friends would have said, I was crazy because I was putting myself in dangerous positions. But the fact of the matter, looking at it now in hindsight, is I was just kind of suicidal. I just didn't really care if I lived. And I feel like that kind of helped me build an image for myself. And I didn't get sober until I was 30 years old. But in that span of time, I was in and out of jail and in and out of prison, and had a pretty bad drug and alcohol problem, and I wasn't a good person. I wasn't by any means any type of a good person in really any way. I hurt people, and I abused people, and I took from people, and the people that was the closest to me and that loved me the most, that are the people that I hurt the most. And sometimes it wasn't most of the time it wasn't because I wanted to hurt them. It was just kind of what I did. And so when I did get sober, I had all that stuff come forward, and I had to take a look at it all, and I had to look at my mom and my dad and my family and the people that I loved. And honestly, I don't know if I really deserved a chance at living life. I felt like, man, I'd blackened this world long enough, and it was cool that other people were getting sober and living good lives, but I didn't really feel like it was in my cards. And I'm lucky. Like, I don't feel like that's my story now. I feel like I put a lot of work in my recovery, and I kind of earned my spot in this world. I've gone back and I've cleaned up a lot of my messes, made right a lot of my relationships, and I think because of that, it got rid of some of the shame and the guilt that I felt growing up, and even the first couple years I was sober.
So can you tell me, I mean, that was, you know, basically everything in a nutshell, that brings us to the present day. But can we go back to that time, and can you tell me, like, maybe one of your darkest moments that you had where you just kind of were like, holy fuck, like, I'm in this deep, like, wow.
Yeah, so I was going in and out of prison. I got a handful of stories about prison. I went in there a meth addict, and I was drinking a lot. I didn't really consider myself an alcoholic, but when I got in there, I was just like, I'm not gonna do meth anymore. And I had this girlfriend that I'd been with off and on, and she decided that she was going to wait for me. And the time came that she left, and I never really dealt with stuff like that very well. Like, I feel like I've always kind of been a sensitive person, but that's not what I would have called it back then. I would have called it definitely anger, or like, I don't know. I actually don't know what I would have called it, but I hurt, right? When she left, I hurt, and I hurt in ways that I couldn't explain, and I was in a place where I couldn't explain it, right? I was with people that I couldn't be like, hey man, I'm hurting, I don't know what to do. And I walked in this cell one day, and everybody was doing heroin, and I decided, like, fuck it, you know, can I swear?
Yeah.
All right.
Fuck yeah. It's explicit, so.
So I decided, fuck it, and for the first time in my life, I did heroin, and it was weird because while I was in prison, before this time, there was a guy that was smuggling heroin in, and had the section I was in and the section next to me all on heroin, and he ended up overdosing and dying in a cell. And because everybody was so scared to say anything to the cops because everybody was high, they just let him be dead in a cell for like 2 days. He had a cellmate that slept in the same cell with him, dead, and so I swore that I'd never do heroin, right? And I was in that moment of weakness, and I was just like, fuck it, you know, and did some heroin. And I got a lot of stories like that, a lot of darkness that kind of went around me, right? Like, right before I got sober, I got in this high-speed chase with the cops, and before the chase had even happened, for like the last few years before it, like I remember I just hated my life, and I hated who I was, and I didn't like waking up, and I didn't like feeling, and I didn't like putting my parents through shit, and I didn't like. I had a girlfriend that I loved, and I just couldn't do anything right. I kept breaking pieces of that relationship apart, and so I was extremely suicidal, and I was always looking for like a good reason to die. Like, I wanted to have like that movie story of somebody dying, right, going out in a shootout with a gang or the cops or something like that. And when I got in this high-speed chase, it kind of ended with them. The cops surrounded me with their guns drawn on me, and my solution was to just get these cops to shoot me. So I did everything in my power to get them to shoot me. I reached in my pants, pretending like I had a gun, did a jerking motion with my arm to make it look like I was drawn on them, and I was hoping that they were just going to fill me full of bullets. And I got hit. I thought I got shot, but I really had gotten tased. But in the moment when I thought that I'd gotten shot, I had this little moment of peace. And it was just like, man, finally this life is over with. And I'd been like that for a long time. I'd just been so sick of life.
Damn. That's pretty heavy. So, I mean, just to share a little bit about my story as well, like, I found myself strung out on heroin when I moved to Italy with this guy when I was 21. And that was like the moment that I decided to leave him. And it was, I was like in this little town called Lake Como on this trip, and we were playing a gig on the beach, and they were running out of heroin, and I found out that it was heroin. I thought it was like morphine. He told me it was morphine, and then he finally like confessed that it was heroin. And anyway, it was just a really, really crazy, epic moment. And the moment that I like decided to leave, I knew I had 20 euro to my name, and I didn't have a game plan. I just knew at that moment, like, I'm better than this. Like, there's something better for me. And so it was like the most fucked up, dark moment of my absolutely of my life. Like, looking back, it was just like, holy shit, there should be, you know, like that movie moment.
Yeah.
Where's my fucking soundtrack, you know? And but also in that moment, that was like really the moment that I had the first inkling of how powerful my being was, you know?
Yeah.
Because I was like 80 pounds strung out in a foreign country with no resources and 20 euro to my name. And I just knew with all my heart, like, I'm fucking out of here. Like, I'm choosing life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was a very clear, concise moment for me. So, and I see that strength and resilience in you, because you can tell when you look at you that you have like all of those very deep, kind of almost a deep sadness to you in a weird way, but it's also the very sadness that empowers you and helps you be this very bright, shining star. And so it's really incredible to watch. And anyway, I do have a memory when I was trying to get clean back in 2006 that I went to the VOA, and I was kind of clean. I mean, I was like trying to get clean or whatever, but you know, in those moments when everything's kind of, the veils are lifting and you're just like sobering up a little bit, and I would go to a lot of meetings, obviously, because I was so emotional and I needed that emotional connection because I had been so fucking numb for so long, you know.
Yeah.
And I remember you rolling up in your motorcycle and you saying something to I even remember what you said. I don't even know how, because I was just like so out of my mind at that time, but yeah, you said something to the effect of like, I get to have these things now. I get to do this and I get to do that, and I get to come and show up to these meetings. And so I don't think you even maybe realize, maybe you do, how impactful you are, you know. And I didn't even know who you were in the scene at that point. I just knew like, holy shit, this guy is powerful. You know, I could feel it back then. And then over the years, it's been really, really cool to like, you know, come back into your life and see that presence that you have. So it's really incredible. So like I said, I'm very honored to be sitting here with you. So what were your dreams and aspirations when you were really, really young?
I mean, that's kind of, I feel like that's part of the reason why I went down the dark road that I went down, because I didn't have any dreams or aspirations. I don't remember ever having the passions and desires that I have, that I've had since I've been sober. I just kind of was existing, and I lived for the day. Like a day out jumping on the trampoline was a good day for me. I didn't think much further than that, you know. And I remember other kids, they would because they would get brought up in school. It was like, who and what do you want to be when you grow up? And people would talk about being singers or cops, yeah, whatever, yeah. And I didn't have anything, and so that's still what other people's. Actually, I do remember, like I wanted to be famous. I wanted to be like a movie star, but I was embarrassed to tell anybody that.
Well, it's kind of interesting how that's kind of played out in a weird way, because
Yeah.
you kind of do have that celebrity status almost in the recovery scene. But like I said at the beginning, you're so humble and down to earth. So, so we've already kind of been over some of the things that I wanted to cover. So what do you think now that you are in the present moment and you have such a powerful life force and you're so driven and you've created all these beautiful things like the Recovery Soldiers and just relentlessly having faith in people? Like, how does that work coming from such an opposite side of the spectrum where you had no faith in yourself and no faith in people to now having so much?
So it's just been a combination of different experiences that I've had, right? Like I sometimes don't like life a whole lot, right? And I get confused by it because I've been searching for the meaning of life, not just my meaning, but the purpose of this world and existence and everything all together. And sometimes I wake up with thoughts like that, and I have a hard time really finding meaning and purpose. But then also I feel like my meaning and purpose here, if there is a meaning and purpose, is to kind of just help people. When you talked about that experience in the VOA, when I said I get to be here, when I got in that high speed chase with the cops, I had picked up enough charges to really kind of send me to prison for the next 10 to 15 years. And so I do feel like I'm kind of on borrowed time. That's what a lot of people in the rooms call it, living on borrowed time. I feel like I'm on borrowed time, and because technically I should be sitting in a prison cell, walking back and forth, pacing, playing spades, eating ramen noodles, and hating everything about